As the official healthcare provider of Minnesota United, Allina Health is dedicated to delivering pro-level care for our loons. But our partnership goes much deeper than what happens on the field. From our shared support of youth-focused nonprofits like Roots for the Home Team to empowering adaptive athletes through the MNUFC Power Soccer Team, Allina Health and Minnesota United are committed to making our communities all together better. Learn more at allinahealth.org/loons. Hello, everybody, and welcome to a very special episode of Sound of the Loons presented by Allina Health. We are here at Allianz Field. We are in the press conference room, but we kind of jazzed it up a little bit because we have a very special guest. Chief Soccer Officer Khaled is here with me. And I know I butcher your name every single time. You do. You say it first for me, and you do it correctly, and then I try to repeat it, and it never comes out the same. Yeah, so how do I perfect that?
It also gets butchered on this AI summary afterwards, and they misspell it.
Well, misspelling it is one thing, but does it actually pronounce it incorrectly? Does anybody besides your family pronounce your name correctly?
Some of my college friends have 20 years later have learned.
Have figured it out?
It's not difficult. It's Khaled.
Khaled.
Yes.
Was that better?
Much better.
Okay, good.
Five stars.
5 stars on the 17th try. Well, thanks for taking the time. I know we both have had somewhat busy schedules. We thanked Eric Durkee for the
very well planned
Monday
schedule.
Afternoon podcast after LA Galaxy game last night. You flew home with the team.
Yeah.
So how's life? How's Minnesota? I feel like how much have you actually been in Minnesota? Because you've kind of been a traveling man, a busy guy.
I think in total maybe 3.5 months since first time I came was like January 24th. So half of the time, but it's good. Love Minnesota. Exploring all the restaurants that have been recommended by staff. Been to Stillwater, which I really liked. The little areas of Edina. Trying to do the best I can on my own to get to know the city.
When you have the time to explore, are you going and exploring with people that you know, because you do have some college buddies and teammates that are here in the area, or are you doing it with others? You doing it on your own? You just kind of picking and choosing? You said the restaurants, but from an area perspective, are there like certain things that you want to do? Because I know when I talked to Sam the other day, he was like, I want to find the parks, I want to find the lakes. He's a nature-oriented guy. What's your sort of list?
First, trying to find somewhere I can go swimming outdoors, because something I enjoy.
Laps? Or in a lake?
In a lake.
Okay.
Just something I like.
Okay.
Obviously went to Manhattan Beach yesterday and made sure I got my swim in. Other than that, I explore most of it on my own. But usually my day looks like 6 a.m. in the National Sports Center till about 7 p.m. and then I bike back on my red bike from Target.
Red bike from Target. I like it. I like the sponsor right there.
Yeah.
When we talk about exploring, and your family is going to be coming over here soon.
Yeah.
What is that going to be like, and what's the pressure been like to find the spot for the family to come over, and what's the conversations been like? How's that transition been? Are they looking forward to coming? I'm sure you've been FaceTiming a whole bunch. What's that been like for you?
Yeah, constantly. I haven't seen them now for I think over a month, and I go back to Europe end of this month. I've always said it's success of 2024 season is making sure they get here and we settle. So looking forward to, signing up for utilities and insurances and leasing cars and registering for schools and just doing some of the normal things. And I enjoy my dorm room, current dorm room, but it'd be nice to get out of there.
Well, and I think, does it feel like it's ramping up a little bit? Because it probably, when you first moved over, it felt so far away when they were going to come. August felt like an eternity. Now it's just around the corner. Does it?
Yeah.
Is their excitement building? Are your kids getting excited to come? Are they excited for this new adventure, or is it more just like they're doing their thing, they're kind of wrapping up with their friends and their family where they're at?
I think we try to keep making sure they enjoy the summer and don't get caught too much in this big move, which will be a big move, and then we'll tackle it when they're here. But no, it's like a summer transfer window. I have 2 of them. Big transfer of the family moving from Europe here, and obviously some of the conversations we'll have around players.
Well, and I think you can appreciate what players go through, right? And you've moved several times with your family, so this isn't the first thing, but this is the first maybe overseas. This is this kind of a move across the world, per se. When you say happy wife, happy life, making sure that the family is settled, it makes your life easier, much like we talk about all the time with the players, and trying to make sure their families and their kids and their loved ones are settled. It makes just the transition onto the field and into the workplace a whole heck of a lot easier.
Yeah, always, and you'll always find players that are very good players move to a city or a country, and it just doesn't work. I mean, you've had it at the highest level when Fernando Torres was at Liverpool, moves to Chelsea. He's not the same player, and that's a I think 2-hour move from Liverpool to London. Same here. I think you look at a player like Sang Bing, who came in last year. And then you compare to the Sang Bin you see this year, it's completely different player. So I think you have to have respect for the kind of the non-footballing aspects of life. And whether we're doing good or bad, never forget that they're all people.
Yeah, I think we never know what's kind of going on and what people have going on in their life. So when we look at this club and this team, how's the adjustment been to that aspect? Because when we talked to you, it was just getting going. I think there's probably still snow on the ground, and you were like thrown into the fire in the sense that you landed, you hit the ground running, trying to meet with every person on the staff. What has that transition been like from a workplace perspective, and what are your thoughts now from halfway through the season?
I think the foundation that the ownership and Sherry has built, I'm really excited about. I always go back to kind of my 4 values. We're on a bad run, and I go back to, okay, am I surrounded with people I can lose with? Because winning usually is the easier aspect of it. Are there good people? And everywhere I look, even around this room and you, good people. And that base is exciting, because then I know if we collaborate and work together, we'll be able to build a strong culture and a strong team. So quite relaxed and working hard and excited to be at the club surrounded by good people.
Well, it's interesting though that you said, am I surrounded by people that I can lose with because of the current run, right? The 6 straight losses, but you don't necessarily know until you go through some of these things together if you are surrounded by the right people to navigate certain circumstances. So for a lot of people at this club, yourself included, Eric Ramsey included, this is the first time you're going through these different scenarios together to kind of find out how do we navigate this in these new relationships. So how is that learning process as well?
I think I think when we were on the first podcast, there was all this kind of noise around no coach, blah 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 blah. Yeah. And I said it's usually when it's stormy seas is when you find a lot about people and the culture, and this is just part of the journey. And look, don't get me wrong, I hate losing, absolutely hate losing, and I think everyone wants to win as many games as possible. But if you take a step back and you go, okay, what can we do better? How can we continue to improve? Are the coaching doing the right thing? Are the players, giving up, or are they connected? Mm-hmm. How are the ownership reacting? How are the staff? So I think this will ultimately lead to something better, and this creates resilience. And every team in football, and specifically in this league, will go through ups and downs. So again, relaxed and just trusting that collaborating with the right people, we will just slowly but surely move forward.
Well, and when you look at how to navigate, and you've been with different clubs in different leagues, what has it been like navigating this aspect in Major League Soccer? You had been a part of it with Manchester City and NYCFC, but in this club now being a part of Major League Soccer, how has your view maybe changed on navigating situations like transfer windows, international breaks or not, when you have these absences and you're missing players with Copa America or the Euros or different friendlies? How has your view sort of changed from that, and maybe how it's affected the current status of the team?
Yeah, so I think there's various aspects of it, right? My kind of arrival, that we were strategic in not spending money in the transfer window because there's so many unknowns. So what we did was, kind of what we looked at as smart choices to add a little bit of depth. Whether it was Bran, Victor, Harvey, giving Tani the opportunity, being brave enough to say, you know what, no, we don't need a left back because we got Rosales, let's move him into left back. Let's have, Paddleford play more minutes. So there's so many positive stories. So the kind of the calmness and the process has not changed by being here. What it is just more adjusting to the factors or the reality that you're in. Do I like that we play through international breaks? No. But we're having those, constructive conversations with MLS where I think, Nelson is doing a great job and being proactive with the clubs. And we just have to navigate through it. And again, it's always how you look at it. We're losing, we had Dane, Tani, Carlos, and Bran not being part of the team. Well, I look at it and I go, beginning of the season, people would only talk about Dane potentially being with Canada. 5 months in, we've turned Tani to be a kind of national team player, actually plays. Harvey plays, Bran plays, and those are great success stories in itself. That doesn't mean, that we still want to do our best to try to win, but you sometimes just have to work with what you have. I think what it tells me is, which we already knew, the depth, the culture, not giving up, and the importance of continuously planning for every window, not just thinking what we're going to do this summer, but there's a winter we have to plan for, and next summer as well, to continue progressing as a club.
So how far into the process of when you got here and you started to examine the roster, the style of play, Eric Ramsey comes in, you see, you're working together on what this club is going to look like, what it's going to look like on the field, seeing the product that's out there, the results that you're getting, and then having to come to some of the conclusions about what you need in the first transfer window, selling, Kervin Arriaga or sending Victor Eriksson off. Like, how do you come to those conclusions, and how long did it take you? What does that process look like for you and the coaching staff? If you can kind of give us a little insight into what that looks like.
I think, I don't know if I said it before, I look at a squad from a squad balance perspective. I break them down into kind of 4 areas. Breakthrough is young and upcoming players. Development, players are developing. Peak is kind of your core of 24 to 27, and then twilight are essentially 29 and above. And you just need to make sure you have the right balance of players within all categories. So, in the winter, we made sure we got younger. We still have, our average this year, I think, is 27.3, one of the older teams, but the minutes played, we're one of the youngest teams in the conference. That's good, but we're still getting a lot of leadership and minutes out of Boxy and Trapp and Fraga and Pukki, while having the right blend of the younger players. So I look at it from that perspective. What squad balance do we have? And then it's obviously in terms of like, what availability do you have within the cap and transfers? What availability do you have in the market to do? Roster spots, and it all comes into essentially a process where everyone is involved. It starts with the recruitment, the profiling. We want to get younger. How's that left back gonna look? The right back. A lot of work comes into it. Hence why I also wasn't as active in the winter window, because I wanted to make sure that we're all aligned. Lucas, Hank have done a great job. Logan, who's a numbers guru, but then we've kind of rearranged.
He's the guy that uses the math that we all learned, that we were just talking about.
Yeah.
Logan is like a magician when it comes to that.
He does. So those are three important aspects of the group, and then we brought, you know, consultants from abroad, data scientists and scouts, and
that are permanently with Minnesota United.
with Minnesota, but
Okay.
live in Europe. And you know, which leagues do we scout? What can we afford and not? And that takes time, and that's now falling into place. So once you have that in place, we also brought on a full video scouting team of 6 scouts that are spread around the world. They're covering regions and really ramped up the ability to be able to locate talent.
Are these people that you knew of, that you worked with?
Some
Okay.
yes, some no. And then once you've had that process, you then latch on kind of the coaches. Okay, so making sure that Adi and Cam and Dennis and Eric and everyone gets exposure to the targets that we have. You then have a big meeting with the ownership and CEO, and we talk, okay, these are the options. Are we going to be conservative? Are we going to blend it? Are we going to be aggressive in the market? And we essentially listen, and I bring that information in, and then we try to make the best possible decision for the club. And we are comfortable, and we're in a good place, and yes, we are going to try to be active in this coming transfer window.
When you talk about the balance in the squad and your 4 kind of categories, how much is that included? Is that just the current first team roster, or are you also including 2s or academy guys?
All of it.
Okay.
All of it.
Okay.
So, you know, if I'm going to sign a midfielder, well, there is Cage,
Yeah.
right? If we sign somebody, is that going to block his pathway? And if we bring in a winger, well, what about Loic? You know, one of the, I think, quite exciting moment is 1-1 at home against Dallas, and you have 4 homegrown players or players locally that are playing. I mean, that's a massive achievement that I think people should be proud of. And then, will that result them having a long career? Don't know. But there is talent knocking on the door, and that's also kind of player pathway and squad balance conversation to have. The academy is doing well. There's some other exciting players. Do we move them up to the first team? Do we send them on loan? Which we'll potentially do if you look at Tani's kind of journey.
Yeah.
So it's a quite dynamic.
Even Dane went on loan
Exactly.
as well.
So it's just a dynamic conversation that's super exciting to be discussing with my colleagues.
There's this isn't in the rundown, so Dirk, you might get mad at me, but because I know you guys kind of chatted about Oregon, but to that point, and I'm doing all these Major League Soccer games right now, and every time I do a game, somebody is signing somebody on a short-term agreement because a lot of teams are dealing with this absence of players with Copa America specifically. Do you think that is it benefits the teams that you can only sign them or bring them up so much, like now Louis can't, and maybe you don't want to get into this, but you know what I mean? We're now he can't come up and help anymore, and he can't get that exposure. I understand the rules are probably in place for a good reason, where you're not taking advantage maybe of certain situations and what those players are getting paid without being on like a first team contract. But how do you think that, does that need to, or do you not want to touch that with a 10-foot pole? You can speak to our situation, you know, Minnesota United situation.
I got no problem to kind of just give a general opinion on it.
Yeah.
The league is great, and where it's gone, where it was to where it is today, fantastic. And now the league just needs to look at some technical adjustments to continue improve the quality and the player pathway. You know, if we're gonna spend so much money into the academy and the second team, there should be a bit more flexibility in how we can move players up and down. Because it is not beneficial to someone like Loic, who would have probably played more minutes if the opportunity was there. But it's a complex conversation. Sure. It's MLS, it's you know, the player union, and it's neither bad or, you know, horrible or has to change. It's just part of the evolution, and I think this is one that we as CSOs and clubs and league need to have a good conversation about, of how we can continue to develop young players.
Well,
and we're having these conversations.
Yeah, I mean, I know Dr. McGuire is. If you're a player, putting yourself in that player's shoes, and you've been brought up on a short-term agreement, and you've done well with your opportunity, but then you know that those are going to be limited, and that regardless, I mean, you're still getting recognized within the club, but just your moments to get back into that first team mix and and show yourself in a Major League Soccer game. I think that would be a little bit challenging mentally and emotionally as a player.
It can, and then I can then flip it and say, how will you handle this? Will you be all super disappointed and your performance go down, or are you going to say, wow, I got an opportunity, I am close, I'm going to show in training and with the second team that I am the guy. And that's probably the only thing they should do, because that's what they can control. Everything else is outside of their control as a player, and yes, it may be mentally tough for that situation, but as a player there's going to be a lot of tough situation, so this is probably also just part of their journey to create a bit of resilience and at the same time a bit of belief, because they've gotten that opportunity.
You just mentioned quite a few of the young players, whether they're on the twos or whether they're currently with the first team, Tanny, one of those included. But I wanted to throw, and we talked about Devin Padelford, I wanted to throw Caden Clark in the mix as well. When you look at some of the young players and the minutes that they've gotten and what they've done with them, because I think you're clearly a firm believer in fostering the young talent, building the young talent, but not throwing them in there just for the sake of throwing them in there. So how do you find that balance where you're putting them in situations where they can succeed, but also they're in there on a need basis because of some of the lack of depth or the injuries or what have you? How do you balance that to build the guys' confidence, but also give them the opportunity? We're not throwing them to the wolves, but they're ready for it. I mean,
sometimes you just have to give them the chance because you have no other option. But today everyone who's on Minnesota United deserves it. Everything else is a subjective judgment if you think they're good enough or not. They're on the contract, there are players, and I think the staff does a fantastic job in kind of getting them motivated and being ready. And when you're young, sometimes you have good games, sometimes you have bad, but it actually even happens for the older ones. I think I'm most proud of is we are creating a learning environment. We want to win, but we're also developing. And I think that's something we should never forget. The same team that everyone was saying is the best in the league 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, now suddenly has, I think 7 or 8 games without a win. It's still the same players, still the same people that, are working hard and have to go through the process to be better. And then there is one thing about sports, and I'll kind of keep it relative to football. The game is ruthless and it owes you nothing. And you're only as good as your last game. But that's why you're a professional athlete. And if you cannot handle that, ultimately the game will consume you and somebody else who's better will take over your spot. And that environment all the players have to understand. And yes, we are a learning environment, but ultimately if you're not performing and if you're not good enough, the environment will also almost show that, versus we have to be saying, oh, you're out or you're in. That's kind of how I would like a winning culture and high performance environment to be. It's kind of brings everyone on board, but it automatically kind of filters out the people on and off the pitch that might not be ready for it.
Just because the Loons are away doesn't mean you have to watch the match from home. With Loons Watch Spots, presented by Coors Light, you can find a piece of that Allianz Field atmosphere at some of your favorite Twin Cities locations. Check out the full list of locations and upcoming watch parties at MNUFC.com/Loons Watch Spots. When you look at how the season has progressed, and it was pretty clear and obvious that I feel like I've been around VAR too long when I just said clear and obvious. We had a lot of those VAR reviews last night in Portland. When you look at this club and how the style of soccer is progressing and what it looks like, because took over, before you even arrived and Cam was still in charge before Eric got here, there was a clear change in the style of play, the way this team was going to look. But then even once Eric arrived, and then I remember distinctly the Charlotte game, right? I mean, there was a very distinct style and formation in the way this club wants to play, but even within that game, it changed playing against Charlotte. And then I think that was like this moment where everyone kind of took notice, meaning the soccer world in general, of that this is going to be different. This Minnesota United team is going to be different in the way they play, the versatility, the flexibility. What do you think of the way it's maybe sort of somewhat of your vision and the coaching staff's vision has shown itself on the pitch?
Yeah, I think from day one when I met Cam, even back in England, when he came to visit prior to this new season, when I interviewed Eric, every meeting I have, I put up a description of our style. I don't get too stuck into formation. Yeah. Formations can change because of player availability, injuries. And essentially there's 10 points, and the first point is win. And then there's 8 points within, and then the last point, it says win. And within those 8, it's, do we high press? How do we counter press? Are we good at set pieces? Are we flexible and adaptable? Right, of course I want to counter press and high press every game, but you also have an opponent, and football is a fluid game. And those points also evolving, right, with the staff, with the players. But I would hope slowly but surely people will see that identity. Yes, sometimes we've dropped off a little bit more than maybe high pressing, but it could be tactical, it could be player availability, because ultimately we still want to win. And I think that will become clearer and clearer over time as you maybe make certain adjustment in player personnel or player characteristics that might fit more the overall style that I want. But big credit to Cam and Jeremy Nadi, who had the first part, and then Eric, and then Dennis comes. And I think if you look at most of the teams in the league, we've had the most change. But that's also exciting because everyone gets to be part of, building on what was built before. And I think, always give credit to the past in a sense as well, because the past are the ones that brought players like Boxy and Tapias. And we are where we are today because it kind of all merges, and we're, hopefully I'm the right custodian to move it forward.
And I should have asked you this before when we were talking about transfer windows and whatnot, and you just talked about player characteristics. Do you have characteristics for each individual number? I know it's not like hard and fast like that then you go and try to find the player that fits those characteristics, or do you already have a player in mind that you want to slot in? Does that make sense? Like, I want a number 10 that has these qualities to play in this kind of a system, a 6 and 8 that these characteristics. Yeah. And then you scout for that player, or is it the other way around, or is it a blend of both? Because we can talk about Sam Shashua a little bit, and you can talk to us about what he's going to bring to the table and his qualities and why you like him. But can you sort of talk to the characteristics and how you look for those players? Yeah,
so I think every position we have characteristics of, the way we scout them, the way we review them, the way we look at data points. We want our number 9 to be able to run in behind and put a lot of pressure. We want our wingers to be able to go on the outside and inside. So we kind of create, or we have what we want our players in our team to be. And then we make sure that we scout for those players. So they fit Eric and the coaching staff and what we want. But then there will be opportunities in the market where a good player might be available that we think fits the overall adaptability or gives us flexibility. Then we will try to do it. And I think, Sam is one of those players. Can play in all offensive positions. It's a player I scouted many years prior to his injury back when I was in Barnsley. And I think he'll be an interesting addition. But again, adaptation. He was injured for some time, and how will he cope with the physical demands? But so far so good, and that goes for any player that we bring in. We want the striker to be this, and that's the ones we go behind. But then a market availability is there's a fantastic left back, we might not need a left back, well then maybe we still do it. So there's always a bit of flexibility in the plan.
What is it about Sam that jumped off the page to you, or what is it that attracted you to his style of play? For people that haven't seen him, or if they don't have the ability to go on and watch every clip of what he can do, what is it about his qualities that he can bring?
I like Sam because he's good in small, tight areas technically, good at set pieces, and wants to create things in the final third. So yeah, I'll look forward to see how he does, and then ultimately will be for him to perform and people to make their own judgment.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because when I did the podcast with him, I asked him to kind of like if he was writing his own little blurb in the media guide, and he didn't want to give too much away. He's like, I want people to come and just see what I can do and watch me on the field. How important is it to you when you're also looking at players and trying to find the right fit for this club, and especially if they're coming over internationally, that they want to be in Major League Soccer? Because this is, everybody always talks about Europe. How important is it that there is an attraction or a want to be here and be a part of this, and the culture piece of it, which I know you're big on?
I'd probably say the most important one for me. And it's not just about I want to be in Major League Soccer, it's I want to be in Minnesota and Minnesota United. And this goes to, for my colleagues on and off the pitch. So that's super important. But then, the recruitment team and the due diligence we do, I'm quite confident that we do a good job. Then we have a player care and team ops operation with Angie, Alex, Aaron, Kevin. Fantastic to help the players off the pitch. So I think, culture for me is extremely important. Then you add to it, the quality, a little bit of salt and pepper, and you should have a great dish.
Well, I should have asked you what your favorite dish you've had so far. Maybe we'll wrap back around to that at the end of the podcast for Minnesota Taste. You can give some people some insight into the food you've already had.
Yeah.
When you look at this schedule coming up, there's a handful of games left, and then there's Leagues Cup. We're just kind of winding down with Copa America, still waiting for a couple players to return, and Tanny and Dane. What have you made of the MLS calendar, aside from the absence of players? Are you looking forward to Leagues Cup? What do you like about it? Did you watch last year's? I think a lot of people have said, a lot of players even have said they were pleasantly surprised with the competitiveness of it. What's your take on Leagues Cup, and what are you looking forward to?
For me, I'm super excited. Any competitive game that's official, whether it's the US Open Cup to the Leagues Cup to the league, for me it's an opportunity to get better and to win. So I'm excited. And it comes at the right time. Will give us a bit of time to regroup. And try to do our best, but again, it's just part of the journey and get us ready for then, I think, Seattle on August 24th. So we play them now, and then I think we play them again in August. So I'm excited. I think it's a good addition that the league has put together, and there's conversations of how that can evolve, and I find it exciting.
When you look at Leagues Cup in particular and the competition, did you ever doubt that it would be competitive? I mean, I was surprised that some people were like, "Oh, wow!" I was kind of questioning what it was going to be like going in last season. I know you weren't here, but I feel like anytime you kind of pit two leagues against each other like that, there's, especially when it's Liga MX and
I think again,
and to play someone different, you're getting out of just the MLS competition in the middle of the season. That can.
I think
something.
We're in the business of sports. I don't know if you put if you set up any game. I think Boxel and Trap and the players are gonna want to win it. It's always competitive. So from a player perspective, I think every game is competitive for us. So I'm looking forward to it. It'll be exciting.
Going into this season, did you have benchmarks at certain points in the season of like you? I think we talked about this either on the podcast or before the podcast, the first one, about, did you say you write like one sentence down in a journal a day?
I do that, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So are you a goal like a write down the goal kind of guy? You're like, okay, by this point in the season, these are the things I would like to accomplish as a club. And this point, you know, not wins and losses per se, but just certain things. Would you say going into Leagues Cup there were certain benchmarks that you wanted to hit and you've gotten there, or maybe All-Star break?
Yeah. So the way I look at kind of our performance, we have 4 reviews, quarterly reviews. We had Q1, we have Q2, which is going to be on Wednesday, and then Q3, Q4 during the year. And I kind of try to break it in. Let's say, you know, we approximately play 40 games, 34 in the league, playoff, and there's US Open Cup, Leagues Cup. So after 10 games, we do a review. As a full department, Sherry as a CEO comes, the business aspect comes, everyone is there, and we talk about, okay, what can we do better? Where are we? And then after that, just the technical staff stays, and we go and look at every aspect of kind of the points I said. Okay, 1, winning, 2, pressing, where are we in our pressing? What is our points per game? You know, what are we projecting? Is it going to bring us to top 4? Is it going to make us to playoffs? So those kind of KPIs or goals are constantly being monitored. But then sometimes you go into an area like now and everyone knows we haven't won. So we need to be both smart in how we address the situation, but also honest enough in looking at what is it something we actually haven't done good enough, so we need to just continue to improve. But yes, very much so. Do we have goals and the KPIs that we try to discuss?
When you look at Eric Ramsey and sort of how he's navigated since he's arrived, I mean, kind of flown in by the seat of his pants, started out red hot, now hitting a little bit of a bump in the road, a learning moment. How do you think he's navigated that? And is it exactly the person that you thought when you had the conversations and the meetings and hired him? Because I listened to all the post-game press conferences, I've listened to the midweek availability, whether I'm doing the games or not, you know, kind of always dialed in. What's your sort of assessment that you're willing to share with the public at this point?
I think Eric, Dennis, Cam, and all the staff and my colleagues are calm, positive, and continue to create the environment that we want. You know, the season is long. We set up certain goals, and we're going to do our best to try to achieve those goals. You know, I don't want us to make up too many excuses or talk about, yes, players at Copa America, but so does Montreal, and so does Inter Miami. And I think if we bog on into small kind of, oh, this is not going our way, we lose sight of the grander picture, and that is to continue to improve and be a competitive club and organization that, you know, we want to, as 14 other teams in the Western Conference, want to get into playoffs and win a title. And every journey is different, but I think it's been handled by class. There's no excuses. I'm calm and excited.
How do you find that? How do you, you've been around a lot of coaches, how do you strike that right balance for a coach where you're being realistic on what's happening? You have some absences, but you're not making excuses. There's accountability there from a staff and players. How do you navigate that balance? And I mean, I've been impressed in watching him at being his first head coaching job, that the way he communicates that to the press, and I'm assuming to the players as well. Like, how do you find that balance? And usually I feel like it would probably come with experience, but he seems like I don't want to say well-versed because then it sounds rehearsed, but, you know, like felt like he's got a good handle on finding that balance with the players and the staff.
And he's young, but he is experienced. The only thing that people say he's not experienced is he hasn't necessarily been a head coach, but he has Dennis around him, he has Cam, like them as a group, and Eric is experienced. He's been in Premier League, he's seen coaches, he's been in that environment. So I think it's just he's doing what he's good at, and the staff are doing what is expected of them. And again, obviously, we want to continuously improve and get better to win as many games as we can.
When you're sitting in your seat up in your office at Blaine, and you have these weeks where it's Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, and now you have a full week, as from your position, how much do you think that's helpful to actually have time to get back on the training ground? And then sometimes it's better to have a quick turnaround and forget about, move on to the next and try to get back to the game?
I think it depends on are you having injuries? Do you need extra training? Coming from England, last club, you essentially played 3 times a week constantly for the whole year.
Not the same travel, which is which is always the big talking point here. Yeah.
Definitely not a 6 a.m. arrival.
Yeah.
It depends. I think in this period, maybe it's good. Obviously, because we, flew in 6 a.m. this morning, so day off today for the players and the coaches, and then they kind of get. Carlos just got back, Bran just got back, so it just gives us a bit of ability to kind of regroup, freshen up, and then be ready to travel again on Friday to Houston.
Thomas Foudry. Did I
Yes.
say that name right?
You did.
Okay,
did.
good. I got that one right. New goalkeeping coach. What can you tell everybody about him?
Yeah, so Tom will be the new director of goalkeeping or head of
Okay.
goalkeeping. He's essentially going to be tasked to lead the entire goalkeeping department from first team to second team down to academy, but also lead on the recruitment. And he's also, good in analyzing the game and set pieces. We worked together at Barnsley. I brought him there. Just again, a good person, experience from England, from Australia, and we're excited to have him here. And I think him and the goalkeepers and the other goalkeeping staff will do a good job.
So is he going to be the one on the field for first team training, or is he going to be the one overseeing? Because you just said he's like literally overseeing. How will that work?
It'll be up to him to decide, but I anticipate him being obviously at all the games, and then how they run the training sessions. That's going to be between Tom and his colleagues.
And how did that conversation come about? I mean, because that's a big move. He came to Barnsley with you, but now coming here, I don't know if he has a family, same thing, where you move the whole crew. I mean, what excited him about this opportunity?
He has a wife and 2 dogs, and I think what excited him is the same. It's excited me and Dennis and Eric and the players that are joining, the growth of the league. The city is great. Have all the professional sports. You have, the stadium, the fans. Just there's so many positives. So. We're excited, and again, it's another addition that will have some adjustment to the group dynamics as everything settles and we move forward.
So what does a successful 2024 look like to you, aside from getting your wife and children over here settled?
I think setting a lot of the processes off, in the background in place, making sure we become even more kind of cohesive and united in our decisions. And then obviously win as many games as possible. I as everyone else, I want to make sure we make playoffs or give ourselves the best opportunity to make playoffs. I think that's and then kind of for people to feel that we are continuously getting better, even when there's times that we're struggling. Yes, we've lost, but we continue to create chances, and I find that positive. And then we just need to improve. So I'm excited. Looking forward to 13 games left in the season, Leagues Cup and potential playoffs.
And then just lastly, you have you want to give any restaurant out there a shout besides Olive Garden?
I think
wasn't that what somebody said to you, or was that back from your college?
That was not
days?
me. It was one of some of the players that said. I think closing remarks.
Yeah.
First one is, I think, just on behalf of Minnesota United, condolences to the Vikings for what happened with one of their draft picks who was killed in an accident. I think they need to know that us as an organization also feel and support if they want to in any way. And then when it comes to food, there's a lot of restaurants, but thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for taking the time. I know you have a very busy schedule, and I'm sure you're jet setting off to somewhere else, and or maybe just going furniture shopping.
Yeah.
Who knows?
That will come at some point.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to meeting your family and having them over here and seeing them at the stadium, and they get to enjoy Allianz Field at some point for a game. So
I'm looking
it'll be fantastic.
forward to that. And thank you again for all the good questions you asked.
Well, I've got some help here, so I got to give Kyle a little bit of credit there.
Yeah.
So, you know, lining up.
Well done, Kyle.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in to another episode of Sound of the Loons presented by Allina Health, and we'll check in again next week.